What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton's climb from a 20th position to the 10th position in Las Vegas was only the surface of the story, and that the true complexity of his race remained hidden behind the telemetry, the tire data, and the quiet radio messages that few people ever heard? You saw Hamilton recover 10 places, but you did not see the brutal technical battle he fought inside the Ferrari SF25. The car struggled to warm its tires, lost temperature on every long straight, and resisted rotation in every cold corner. Hamilton was not simply overtaking. He was driving against a limitation that shaped every lap and every decision he made on the track. And what no one showed you is how Hamilton managed this instability with remarkable control. While some drivers spun or slid in the cold conditions, Hamilton used experience and instinct to keep the SF25 alive, building tire heat with delicate inputs and avoiding the mistakes that ended other races. The telemetry later revealed how much work he was doing behind the wheel to stabilize a car that never reached its performance window. Stay right here, because once you understand the hidden fight Hamilton faced, the strategic decisions Ferrari made, and the exact radio exchanges that defined his recovery, you will see his Las Vegas drive in a completely different way. The Las Vegas Grand Prix placed Lewis Hamilton at the center of one of the most complex challenges of his first season with Ferrari. Starting from a 20th position following a qualifying session where tire temperature refused to stabilize, he began the race knowing that every lap would demand extraordinary management. The desert night was brutally cold, the long straights drained heat from the tires, and the street layout exposed any car that failed to warm its rubber quickly. Hamilton understood almost immediately that the Ferrari SF25 would not help him. If he wanted to recover positions, he would need to build grip through precise driving rather than depend on natural performance from the car. As the lights went out, Hamilton entered a turbulent midfield where every driver fought for control on an icy surface. Several cars ahead locked brakes, slid over patches with low grip, and struggled to maintain stability. Hamilton felt the same instability the moment he turned the wheel. The front tires refused to engage, forcing him to brake cautiously and delay commitment through the apex. His radio messages at this stage were calm but clear. He reported that the car lacked rotation and that the rear was reacting slowly to his demands. Instead of forcing the situation, he focused on giving the tires the minimal heat they needed to avoid dropping even further from their fragile operating window. As the field began to spread out, Hamilton started building rhythm. He advanced not by raw pace, but by reading the behavior of the cars ahead and identifying who was struggling most. This was where his experience mattered. He made progress by choosing the moments when his tires were warm enough to support a controlled attack. Ferrari watched the telemetry and saw that his driving inputs were deliberately smooth, avoiding slides that would cost him tire temperature. Each overtake was calculated, and each defensive move was measured to avoid taking the tires out of their narrow window of stability. His early gains were the result of race intelligence rather than mechanical advantage. The pit window added another layer of difficulty. Ferrari needed to time Hamilton's stop perfectly because rejoining the track on cold tires risked pushing the SF25 into a state of complete imbalance. When Hamilton left the pit lane, he immediately felt how the tires lost temperature faster than they could recover. He reported that the front slid even in gentle corners and that the rear required careful modulation to avoid snapping. Ferrari monitored the data and saw large fluctuations in tire temperature from one sector to the next. This was one of the moments where Hamilton's discipline prevented the race from slipping away. He adapted instantly, adjusting corner entry speeds to generate heat and stabilize the tires. In the middle phase of the race, Hamilton found himself in a delicate rhythm. His tires oscillated between usable and unstable states depending on the section of the circuit. The straights removed energy from the rubber, while the corners restored only part of what was lost. His radio messages reflected this complexity. He described the balance shifting unpredictably, forcing him to reevaluate his inputs lap by lap. Ferrari knew the SF25 struggled in cold conditions, but the telemetry showed that Hamilton was working far harder than the timing sheets suggested. His capacity to read tiny grip variations allowed him to avoid the mistakes that caught out other drivers in the field. By the final laps, Hamilton had positioned himself securely inside the top 10. The SF25 continued displaying clear weaknesses, but Hamilton extracted everything it could offer without crossing the line into instability. He maintained pace, defended when necessary, and avoided sudden movements that could drop the tires below their functional threshold. When he crossed the finish line in the 10th position, It appeared from the outside, like a clean recovery. Yet inside Ferrari, the story was far deeper. The data revealed how much Hamilton had overcome, how precisely he managed tire temperature, and how smoothly he guided a car that refused to reach its performance window. This context is what no one showed, and it completely redefines the value of his result. The fundamental issue Hamilton faced throughout the Las Vegas Grand Prix was the Ferrari SF25's inability to bring its tires into a stable operating window. This weakness had already compromised his qualifying session, and the race exposed the problem even more clearly. The cold desert night made it almost impossible for the tires to retain the heat they needed, and the long straights of the circuit amplified this flaw by draining temperature before Hamilton even reached the next braking zone. From a first lap, he felt a front end that refused to grip and a rear axle that hesitated under load. This instability meant that every input had to be calculated because the car offered no natural support. As Hamilton progressed through the early laps, the telemetry revealed how severe the problem truly was. Ferrari saw the tire temperature curves rise slightly through the first sequence of corners, only to collapse again as soon as Hamilton accelerated onto the straights. This rapid loss of energy meant the tires never stayed within the thermal zone required for consistent performance. The imbalance created a sensation that Hamilton described on the radio as a lack of rotation and hesitation during turn-in. Even though he was gaining positions, he was doing it with a car that fought him at every phase of the lap, demanding constant adaptation rather than allowing any rhythm to develop. This unstable thermal behavior triggered a deeper aerodynamic consequence. The SF25 relies heavily on ground effect, which demands a stable ride height and predictable airflow beneath the chassis. When the tires lose temperature, the car rides slightly higher, breaking the aerodynamic ceiling under the floor. This created sudden drops in downforce, exactly where Hamilton needed stability the most. The telemetry showed abrupt fluctuations in aerodynamic load through mid-corner phases, and these matched perfectly with Hamilton's observations about the rear sliding unpredictably. Ferrari understood that the aerodynamic platform was collapsing and rebuilding several times each lap, forcing Hamilton to manage a constantly shifting balance. Traffic made this dynamic even more complicated. Hamilton spent much of the race overtaking cars with their own grip problems, which meant he often had to move offline into colder sections of asphalt. Each offline entry created additional sliding of the tires, which removed even more heat from the rubber. This produced a cycle where every overtaking maneuver risked destabilizing the tires further. Ferrari could see on the telemetry that Hamilton was performing micro-corrections through the steering wheel to keep the car under control. What looked like smooth overtakes on television were, in truth, precise adjustments to prevent the SF25 from falling into complete thermal collapse. The pit stop provided fresh tires, but it also exposed the SF25's weakness in the most painful way. The new rubber lost temperature almost immediately after leaving the pit lane, and Hamilton reported that the front tires felt disconnected from the surface. Ferrari saw that the temperature drop was even steeper during the second stint, confirming that the car lacked thermal flexibility in cold conditions. Hamilton again had to adjust his driving to compensate. He modified his corner entry speeds and carried smoother arcs to generate enough lateral load to bring minimal heat into the tires. This was not part of the original strategy. It was a necessary adaptation to prevent the balance from collapsing entirely. By the final laps, the full extent of the problem was undeniable. The SF25 never reached a stable state at any point in Hamilton's race. The tires operated below their intended temperature window. The aerodynamic platform fluctuated corner by corner. The balance shifted without warning depending on how much heat the tires lost on the straights. And despite all this, Hamilton maintained control, advanced 10 positions, and avoided mistakes that the conditions invited. Ferrari realized that Hamilton had not driven a car performing below expectation. He had driven a car that never once entered its performance window. This is the problem almost no one saw, and set the foundation for everything Vasseur later discovered in the telemetry. When Frédéric Vasseur and the Ferrari engineers opened the race telemetry, the first revelation was immediate and decisive. The tire temperature graphs showed that the SF25 never reached the operational window during the entire Grand Prix. Not a single lap displayed the stability Ferrari expected. The tires warmed slightly during the corner sequences, then lost that progress instantly on the long Las Vegas straights. This explained why Hamilton repeatedly spoke of the front refusing to grip and why the rear reacted with hesitation. The data confirmed that Hamilton spent the race managing tires that were never fully alive, forcing him into a constant state of adaptation with every change in surface, speed, and load. From there, Vasseur moved into the aerodynamic traces, and this is where the magnitude of Hamilton's management became undeniable. The SF-25 depends on downforce generated by airflow beneath the floor, but the telemetry showed that the aerodynamic load collapsed several times per lap. Each drop corresponded to a moment where the tires lost temperature and the car rose slightly from its optimal ride height. In these phases, the downforce weakened so dramatically that the balance shifted without warning. Hamilton had described this instability on the radio with surprising precision. What the data added was the scale of those fluctuations. The car was far more unstable than Hamilton revealed during the race. The next comparison Vasseur made was between Hamilton's inputs and Leclerc's, and this contrast provided one of the clearest insights into Hamilton's performance. Both drivers suffered from the same structural limitations, yet Hamilton's steering trace displayed a pattern of earlier, smoother adjustments that compensated for the aerodynamic instability. He anticipated the moments when the front would slide or the rear would hesitate before the data even showed the onset of the problem. Vasseur realized Hamilton had been reading the behavior of the SF-25 more quickly than the car could stabilize itself. Leclerc reacted to the instability. Hamilton predicted it. This difference explained how Hamilton managed to climb 10 positions despite the mechanical disadvantages.